Welcome to Still Science Lab. Tonight, we explore about what actually happens when CERN shuts down on June 29th. Deep beneath the quiet, picturesque borders of France and Switzerland lies a sleeping giant. It is a piece of machinery of such incomprehensible scale and terrifying ambition that it borders on the mythological. Buried in the dark, cold bedrock of the Earth is a 27-kilometer ring of highly engineered superconducting electromagnets. This structure operates at temperatures significantly colder than the deepest, most isolated voids of outer space, bathed in liquid helium to maintain a state of absolute, frictionless zero. Its sole, monumental purpose is to accelerate invisible, subatomic particles to a fraction of a hair below the absolute speed of light, and then smash them together in a violent, microscopic recreation of the Big Bang. It is the Large Hadron Collider, the most complex, expensive, and powerful instrument ever conceptualized and constructed by human hands. We built this colossal engine to pry open the fundamental laws of reality. We built it to stare directly into the quantum fire, to break the heavy matter of the universe down to its most basic, indivisible components, and to decode the invisible architecture of the cosmos. But when you build a machine specifically designed to manipulate the very fabric of existence, you invite a specific, creeping kind of terror into the collective human consciousness. You invite the fear that human beings are blindly plucking at the heavy strings of a system they do not fully understand. And the central mystery we are facing right now is a terrifying pattern that has emerged from the dark. On June 29th, this monumental machine is scheduled to power down completely. It will enter a deep, cold, 4-year hibernation until the year 2030. And history tells us a deeply unsettling story.
And he's like, we're in a new universe. And I'm like, maybe. So, okay, my husband noticed it. I noticed it. That was weird. But later on that day, when we were all gathered, my HOA president, who she's amazing. She is like the best HOA president ever. I love her so much. And she keeps everything maintained, and she directs the landscapers. She gets the trees trimmed, so she knows every single bush and tree that's on this property. And she is very, closely watching all of these things and making sure she's communicating with our landscapers. And so she's sitting with her back to these trees. And next to her is another one of the residents in my complex. And I walk up to her and I said, I'll call her T. T, where did those trees come from?
Yes, and many children see them too. About 75% of the world's children today are being born with etheric vision. And when your children talk with people and have daydream playmates, the chances are they are actually speaking to some of these people, because these angels or angelic forces or nature spirits, as they're often called, will often make themselves seen.
And all of a sudden I hear him go, whoa, or something like that. So I look up, and as I look up, I see this thing.
And I said, I've never seen a butterfly like you before.
I know that the paranormal is real. Listen.
As soon as I spoke to it, it turns around and makes eye contact with me. And then it stands upright.
And it was at that moment that I saw it was like an orange light appear above this row of trees. And from this sort of orange light, this thing appeared. Its wings were actually like sycamore leaf shaped.
And I started talking to them. I'm like, hi, are y'all the dwarves? And I would hear whispers that would say, hi, yeah, you want to play? And it wasn't just my imagination. And I had told him, I'm like, my dwarfs, they like beer, you know? And my dad's like, yeah, sure, your dwarfs like beer. And they were holding a conversation, and his beer slid upwards instead of downwards, how the house was tilted. And him and my brothers jumped up.
So I stopped calling out Adam, and I'm just kind of, my mind draws a blank, and I stop behind that tree stump. I'm pretty close to it now because I took a few steps forward, and I see this thing.
Welcome everybody tonight to Fascinating Fae. Tonight, we're traveling to California to talk with Lana. Lana, how are things going in California tonight?
Things are warm and beautiful in California today.
Well, thank you for allowing me to make my favorite joke, which is that no podcast on Earth is allowed to start without talking about the weather. So we have formally checked that box. Lana, I do the same intro at every show, and I just do that so that, you never know who's dropping in for the first time, and I'd like to make everyone feel comfortable, including yourself. Could I take a minute and just give you that intro now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So, first order of business on the show, as I mentioned offline, we are not here to convince anyone of anything. It's truly difficult to, I think, first of all, experience these things, and then second pressure is, trying to convince somebody, especially if someone's not ready to hear it. So here on the show, we just kind of do away with that emphasis. I take it as a given since I've reached out to you that, you've got something interesting to tell, and I don't want to put any barriers to that story coming out in full in the way. The other thing I say is look, it is brave to come and talk on this show. It is brave to talk about weird and strange stuff that has happened in your life, and it can come with ridicule. It can come with real world consequences. It's also just nerve-wracking to talk to a stranger about weird stuff and feel like, you're being recorded. So it's real bravery, on display to come on the show. I want you to know I think that, and that's kind of, the environment you're stepping into here. And then just finally, I just like to let my audience and guests know that my interview style primarily is I'm a pretty quiet interviewer. I like to let the guest have as much time and space as they need to build context and complete the narrative. So for that reason, I'll be, quiet once I hand off to you here in a second. Just letting you know, of course, I'm going to jump in with questions, and if I hear or, intuitively connect something that you're saying to another thing I've learned or experienced, I'm going to share that with you. And that's pretty much the format of the show. There's no goalposts, there's no rush. It's really just about exploring events and the impact they've had on people. So with all that said, if you'd be so kind, I know you have an incredible story involving trees, but before we get there, to what extent you're comfortable, please introduce yourself a little and kind of wade us into this event.
Perfect. So I have a business where I actually do quantum healing hypnosis, which is a type of past life regression hypnosis that was developed by Dolores Cannon. And if any of your audience members are familiar with Dolores Cannon or have read any of her books, they will know that it's very mind-bending. You would love it. If you haven't already read all of her books, I would highly recommend doing so. And in the process of me reading those books, she talks about her QHHT method of past life regression. And I was going through a little bit of a health crisis, and I needed some healing. And the traditional Western medicine just wasn't working. And as I was listening to her books on Audible, I thought, gosh, maybe I should try this. And it worked. And therefore, I actually ended up retiring from a tech career and pursuing education to be certified in QHHT. And so I live in this world. I live in the world of fairies. Sorry, my dog might bark periodically. I'm so sorry. I live in the world of fairies. I live in the world of, past lives, and I hear my clients explain these things all the time. But, that doesn't discount the 25-year career that I've had in tech. And moving forward, after I got certified, my psychic gifts started coming into play. So that's just kind of a basis for where I live in the everyday world. Now, I'm very familiar with things like glitches in the matrix and things like that. But what I didn't expect is to experience one of my own. And I will say that though I do spend a lot of time with things that seem impossible because my clients, when they're put under, I mean, they've been abducted by aliens, they've been fairy, they've been, a tree, a chicken, and, people who are human and have had interactions. They've had traumas from their past lives that we're able to heal, and it alleviates issues in their current life. So even though I'm in this world, I still do live with a logical mindset. And in fact, before all of this, I really was in my left brain and I needed proof for everything. That's because I've been psychic my whole life, but it was scary for me and I didn't understand it. So I really veered into the science and into the logic. But as I've started embracing the right side of my brain, the creativity and imagination, my life has become more full and it actually makes a lot more sense. You can't always apply logic to everything in life. And that's what happened recently for me. So I live in a community where it's kind of like a brownstone type community, and we have an HOA. And a few weeks ago, I came home from a 10-day vacation, and there's a little bit of a open area where it's landscaped right next to my house. And I look as I'm getting out of the car, we had driven and it was from a long drive. I get out of the car and I look to my right and I'm shocked to see that there are new trees, like 15-foot trees that are just next to this like 150-foot pine that we have in our common area. And I didn't say anything because I tend to not be that observant. Okay. Like I would not be surprised if something was there and I didn't see it. Okay. So I just kind of dismissed it. And that differs from my husband, who he will notice if people got new tires in our neighborhood. Like he notices everything. So to my surprise, a couple weeks later, I came out and he was kind of setting up for this block party. We have a taco party every year, and he was putting up the tent and getting the cooler out and everything. And the party takes place like right in front of our house, and the patch of trees are to the right of my house, and that's where everybody would be gathering. And I come out and he's like, "Babe, where did those trees, were they there?" And I was like, "No, they weren't." And I was like, when we got home from our vacation, I saw them, but I just kind of passed it off because, me, I might miss a detail like that. Um, and he's like, "They were not there." And I was like, "I think they were not there either. Like, I don't know where they came from." And he's like, "We're in a new universe." And I'm like, "Maybe." So, okay, my husband noticed it. I noticed it. That was weird. But later on that day, when we were all gathered, my HOA president, who she's amazing. She is like the best HOA president ever. I love her so much. And everything, um, she keeps everything, maintained, and she directs the landscapers. She gets the trees trimmed, so she knows every single bush and tree that's on this property. And she is very, closely watching all of these things and making sure she's communicating with our landscapers. And so she's sitting with her back to these trees. And next to her is another one of the residents in my complex. And I walk up to her and I said, well, I'll call her T. T, where did those trees come from? And she turns around and looks behind her and her jaw drops and she's like, "Where did they come from?" And I was like, "No, you don't think they were there?" She's like, "No, where did they come from?" And next to her is, I'll call her P. And P was like, oh my God, I just pulled my husband out 3 weeks ago, which is like exactly the time frame that I had first seen it. Their house, the trees like are right against their wall. And she had pulled her husband out 3 weeks earlier and said, oh my gosh, where did these trees come from? And she said that because when she walks up her front walk, her view would be obstructed by these trees if they were there prior. Otherwise, if they're not there, she would have a full view of my next door neighbor and my house. And now she has an obstructed view toward our houses. And she was like, what the heck? And she couldn't figure it out. But all of us, we didn't mention it until we were all together. And then T, the HOA person, she's like, I was just standing here last week looking at this hedge. Now, the way that it is there's a big tree on the left, these new trees in the middle, there's 4 of them. And then on the right is a tall hedge. And the hedge normally is only about maybe 4 feet high, but the hedge grew. And so she's like, I was just staring at this hedge thinking that it's getting a little too tall, and I was going to tell the landscapers to cut it back a little bit. She's like, I would have noticed the 15-foot trees next to it. What the heck? And I'm like, CERN shut off, CERN shut off. And if your listeners aren't familiar, CERN is the particle accelerator in Switzerland. And it recently just shut down for a period of 2 years, they say for maintenance. But there's other speculation as to why it shut down. But how this relates is there's a lot of speculation that when they are doing their work, they accidentally create the Mandela effect or alternate universes. Those are, other adjacent conspiracy theories, but I was joking around and I was like, that's when CERN shut off. So I just thought it was a really interesting coincidence that all of a sudden CERN shut off and now we have these 4 new trees. And I went around to our party and asked everybody. The other people who were there have just moved out of the house their kitchen window would look directly at those trees. And they're there. Now, those 2 people are very logical. And the guy of the husband, he is a no bullshit kind of guy. Like he does not believe in anything that can't be proven. He's very pragmatic, very scientific. He's an engineer. And so he wouldn't budge on anything unless he was sure. And even he was like, those weren't there. I know. I lived there for, I don't know how many, 10 years. I've stared at this patch of land through my kitchen window and they're not there. And his wife, she was like, oh my God, what? And so the fact that like, it wasn't just me, I could totally accept if it were just me. I would just pass it off like, okay, no big deal. But well, first of all, my husband, he is so observant and he notices everything, every single, like, I'm like, how do you even notice that? But he does. He's just always been like that. And so the fact that he noticed it, I was like, okay, it's not just me. And then everyone else also was like, those trees were not there. So I literally was just still my curious, pragmatic mind kicked in, and I'm going back and I'm looking for photos of previous taco parties that we've had because we have like a drone shot and we have, photos that people take. And I actually found photos from last year where the trees were there. And I'm just like, what? How is that possible that everybody noticed these new trees at the exact same time? And all of us believe that they were not there, that they literally just blinked into reality. I don't know. I can't I can't explain it, but then I found other photos where they are not there. And those photos were from about 15 months ago. So the previous taco party was about 10 months ago. And then we had another, we have like happy hour. And so we all sit in front of, in this same common area and we have our little cocktails and things, but we have pictures from those too. And I found a picture from about 15 months ago where those trees were not there. They were different bushes that were lower to the ground about 1 foot. And they're different because they're darker and they have berries. These are actually not, they don't have any berries and they're a lighter leaf. So I've just been racking my brain as to what could have happened and about how the mechanics of the Mandela effect would work, because I've seen a lot of people state online, well, they're there in if they're there now, then when you look at former pictures, they're also there. But then I also have a picture where they're not there, and it's very confusing. So now this is like this big topic where everybody in our little complex, they call them the magic trees, because we all are certain that they weren't there. So it leads me to kind of, wonder, did we just all pop in or phase into a different parallel existence where there were always the trees there and now we're the new ones in the equation? I've researched what kind of trees they are. It seems that they could be oh, I forget, some kind of cherry tree. I don't know if it's the fruit bearing kind, but cherry wood. And but they only grow 3 to 5 feet a year on good years. And so that means that they would have had to have been there 3 years ago and still growing. And they weren't, because I have the photo of them 15 months ago when they're not there. So that doesn't even make sense. So yeah, I mean, and after that, everybody's on the group chat kind of talking about how weird this is. And thank God it wasn't only me, because like I said, 3 of us noticed that they were there at the same time, basically 3 weeks before our party. So yeah, that's kind of what happened. Very interesting. And I still don't really understand or know how all of that works or what happened. But I would love to think that it was CERN shutting off that, kicked us into a different parallel universe or something. Hopefully it's a better one.
Wow. Lana, I love it when an episode just comes right out of the gates, like on fire, So congratulations. That is a riveting fucking story. I've been listening ultra intently and tracking a couple of things that I'll get to in a second. But before I do, I want to ask, so when you got back from the vacation and CERN shutting off, is that like around the same date, or is that the actual date?
Yeah, it was within 2 days of it shutting off, because it shut off when we were on vacation.
Okay, that's why you keep referring back to that. Thanks for establishing that as a time point for this story. Mm-hmm. Not every story gets such a hyper-specific time point as part of the hypothesis, and I'm not in any way like educated on CERN, but I'm, like any internet sleuth, have heard all the conspiracy theories about what CERN has done to timelines and the Mandela effect. And in fact, when initially presented with the Mandela effect, whenever that shit hit the internet, I can't even remember, 6 years ago, longer probably. Mm-hmm. No, longer. It was like, no, maybe 6. I don't even know. I'll have to go back and look. There were times where I was like, yeah, Berenstain Bears. I don't remember, like.
It was not Berenstain Bears when I was learning how to read on those books. I'm sorry. It was Berenstein.
I mean, I used to be like dating this girl, Colleen, and we got so fucking tripped out about it. And her aunt was a librarian in rural, like, Nova Scotia. And so we called her aunt just right then and there. And we're like, go to the Dewey Decimal System index card thing, like the old paper one, and find, like, and she's like looking through and she's like, no, wait, no. And she's like, what? And the librarian herself is deeply fucking confused because it's spelt the wrong way. And
oh my gosh.
Right. So I've been there. I've been right where you're at, where you're digging. And then, another one too is like, I don't know, there's the weird potential shift of the position of South America in relation to North America. A lot of like, you can kind of see like some Mandela effect maps, which is like the old map of Earth versus the new map of Earth. And I, at times, like, have had real cognitive disconnect where I'm like, I do remember that old map of Earth being like what I remember. And in specific, like, time zones in Central and South America seem to have shifted to the right.
Really?
By 2 hours. Yeah.
Oh, I wasn't aware of that one. That's cool. I'll check that one out.
That's all to say, like, there's a lot of real interesting rabbit hole shit that could be its own 100-episode podcast series just about CERN and the Mandela effect. But let's just like park that for a second, because that could easily become the whole focus of this conversation. Your individual story is way too fascinating for me to not have questions. Just a reminder, there's never any gotcha moments on this show. I am a inductee into the high strangeness of this reality. And so when I ask questions, it's just because I'm curious, and I love to do exactly what I heard you doing, which is analyze this to the best of my ability. I'm right there with you. So, okay, like, first really interesting part of it is that the homeowners association chair, or whoever, the leader, the boss lady there, doesn't know about the trees. That's your dead giveaway that something's wrong.
That was the moment. I was like, there is no way that these trees were there if she says they were not there. And she was shocked. Her jaw was on the ground. And like, that to me was the moment. And then on top of that, P, who lives adjacent to that patch of land, also, it was shocking enough for her to come out, or have her husband come out and look. Her husband's like so laid back. He's like, I don't know. He didn't notice either way, you know, but she did.
Huh. I mean, perception, like, tendencies aside, right? There's a real consensus that you built there amongst a wide group of people that those trees were not there. The identification of the tree wood, and then track, like, as soon as you said cherry, I was like, that's impossible. They would have been there for 5-10 years if they're 15 feet tall. Fruit trees grow slow. They're slow.
Yeah.
They don't really grow up so fast. And like, the other thing too is like, as you mentioned, you know, I think you sort of said the one lady, the HOA lady, just to go back there for a second. True story, right? In my condo back in Canada, I just recently settled like a lawsuit where my condo association had sued me for smoking too much pot in my unit. And I mean, Frank Pfizer, the guy who's my resident association manager, I mean, that fucking dude was on top of every goddamn fart I took, you know.
Exactly.
He would know if there was trees in a circumstance, you know, as an analog. So your homeowners association woman is absolutely the same personality type as Frank, as is every other building manager. They're up in your shit. They're on top of the who's parking, who's fucking dog is taking a shit without fucking getting picked up. Like, they know.
Yes.
They got you. They're going to have cameras on the garbage. Did you put too much out? Did you, like, who's, I'm telling you, if she's turned around and said, yeah, where did they come from? I can completely be taken into that moment with you, Lana, and I can understand like what might have been happening in your brain. So that's my question. When she said that, what was exactly going on for you? What was your thought process then?
Well, that was my barometer. I was like, if Tammy says, both my husband and I were like, if Tammy says that those trees were already there, then we're just mistaken, you know? And so when she turned around and she literally, I you know, like I said, Tammy, P, where did those trees come from? And she's like, where did those trees come from? And she stood up and turned around and was like, where did those come from? And that's again when P chimed in, and she was like, oh my God, you guys. And she started telling her part of the story. So in that moment, I was just floored. I was excited because I was like, we're in a different parallel universe. We're in a different universe. And then I started talking about CERN, and nobody else knew what CERN was except for my husband and I. But I was like, you guys, we've shifted into a different reality or something, because those trees were not there. And then, like I said, I went and I asked everyone else, and nobody said, oh yeah, they were there. I've seen them. Everybody was like, what? There were no trees there before. And that is really what sealed the deal for me, because, well, Tammy was the big one, because I keep saying her name. Whoops. But yeah, she was the big one, because like you said, she just would know. She knows every single thing in this common area, and she's really great. She's not like one of those like busybody type HOA presidents. She cares and creates a really beautiful environment for us to live in. And she does a great job of it. And she's on top of all the maintenance, every maintenance that we need, our roofs and everything. And so for her not to believe that there were trees there, like I said, that was what sealed the deal for me. But then the fact that nobody else said that the trees were there out of our whole community. Now, the other people, they're probably not as credible, only because like they don't live right in front of this place. But all of the neighbors that lived in this little part of the property, all of the ones that look at it every single day, park their cars right next to it every single day, and then of course T, who is responsible for maintaining it. All of those people, and then everybody else, was like, no, they weren't there. But the fact that the ones like my next door neighbor, me, our other next door neighbor, and then the person whose house is adjacent to that patch of land were all adamant they were not there.
Yeah, there's three really key perspectives that you shared there that validate you and your partner. Well, one is T, the homeowners association woman. The other is the woman who dragged her husband out because they touched the side of her house. And the final is the couple that lived there for 10 years and looked out at that plot of land. Up to and including the husband, who's extremely pragmatic sounding and recalcitrant to just be woo-woo. And even he was like, those were not there.
He's also Canadian, by the way.
Oh, well, we're a serious folk.
That's right.
It's the cold, hard weather makes you, tough. But jokes aside about, Canada, that is how intently I was listening to you. And I actually kind of want to go through each of those perspectives. Can we do that? So the woman who said the trees would be touching the side of her house, she's the second woman to chime in after Tammy says something, right?
Yes.
And she tells, okay, I pulled my husband out. So tell me a little bit more about that. So her house is beside this grove of trees? Okay, just kind of describe that for me.
Okay, so it's the let's see, east side of her house. The sun rises over there, and so there's shadow that gets on her house from there, and she does have a window on that side. And her husband had mentioned during our conversation about it, he's like, I thought that there was more of a shadow, there was more of a shadow inside the house. And so he mentioned that. But so they've lived there she bought the house, I think, in the 80s, and he's lived there since 2019. And so when you face their house, their entryway is on the left, and there's a walkway. And when you go down the walkway, you look straight into their kitchen, and their front door is on the right. But on the left is an open area that looks into that exact patch of land. Within 5 feet from their walkway are the new trees. So when you're walking down their walkway, the tall hedge is first, then the 4 trees, then the huge pine. And it goes from front to back. Okay. So when you're walking on their entryway to get to their front door, they would absolutely see this patch of land every single time they go through their front door. They can see the hedge. They can see where the new trees are, and the height of the trees. So we have 2-story houses, and on the outside of the house, there's a trim that kind of delineates where the second story is. And so the tree growth is taller than that. And so it's over 12 feet tall, because our second stories would be about on the 12-foot mark. So the trees are 12 to 15 feet. And the other interesting part too, and I'll go into this just a little bit here, is we were inspecting the ground to see if any dirt was disturbed. Like, we're like, is there a tree fairy that came and planted these trees?
Just a brief second. I mean, you are psychic as all heck, because I was just holding in my mind, like, I need to ask her about the ground. So go on, please.
Yeah. So the ground surrounding them are dry. It's dry, not upturned at all. And there's like bramble, like almost like maybe exposed roots that are above, and they're dry. They're not green. They're dry, brown, little bramble, thin, wiry looking branches or roots that are kind of exposed. The tree trunks themselves are maybe they're little. They're young. They look, young. They're not like they're probably about a 3-inch diameter. So, they're probably, if they had been growing there, would probably be about 3 years old, I guess, 3 to 5 years old. But like I said, I have these photos from 15 months ago where they weren't there. And then it does look like there's been branches on the bottom clipped off, like perhaps our gardeners have clipped them. And so that's the only outstanding piece that we haven't gotten answers to is, were the landscapers aware that they were there? Are they the ones that cut them? How long did they notice that they were there? Are they in the same universe as we are? So yeah, we've explored all of that in terms of, do they look newly planted? No. The ground is compact and hard, and there's pebbly, dry dirt, and then also the bramble. So they're established. And then the tree trunks are pretty thin, so I think they would be on the newer side if they, it wouldn't have been there for 20 years. It didn't look like it. It is still a newer tree, but they weren't there. So I don't know how a 3-year-old tree could suddenly be there without it having grown there.
And this is like a few months ago, yes?
No, it was in July 2026. Yeah.
Okay, so about a month ago.
Yeah.
First of all, my apologies. Actually, one of my least favorite things to do or to hear done is when a host interrupts a guest. However, you were kind of going on there on one direction, and I was just like mentally making notes about what I wanted to ask next. And I was like, I need to ask her about the ground. And you just like totally shifted your flow of conversation to talk about the ground in direct correlation with me, holding that thought in my head. And I just felt
I'm not surprised.
I just felt that was like highly remarkable, and a sensation overcame me that made me blurt that out. But please accept my apology for.
No, gosh, it's your show.
Truly, it's the guest's show. I'm just here to, steer the ship through the waters. But it's really all about you in this moment, and what you're telling me has got my full attention. So, but not only is what you're telling me got my full attention, there's characteristics of the onset of this conversation and that moment that have me totally captivated by you now as well. So you're doing a great job here tonight. Thanks for agreeing to talk with me. I'm having a great time.
Me too. Thank you.
Cool. I hope you're having fun too, I was about to say. So yeah, let's just talk about that for a second for everyone listening, because, I don't like to allude to things that no one knows. When we started talking, I was all queued up and ready to go. And I had tested my microphone and my earphone and everything, and it was fine. And then I initiated my conversation with you, and my wired mic just disappeared from the list of microphones as I was talking to you on it. Okay. And then my audio software crashed. Okay. And then it took 5 minutes to get talking to you, and that was before we even started talking, or I knew anything that you were going to tell me about. So there's a lot of interesting energy around this conversation in addition to your story. But okay, all that's amazing. If it's happened in July, then, and you're 3 weeks out from the taco party from your vacation return, it's a hot, dry California summer. It's not going to look older at the base. It would look, you would still see the holes where it had been freshly dropped in this tree.
Oh yeah. And there would have to have been different soil too if they had been planted.
All of what you described in intimate detail there sounds like established tree.
Yes. And if to our eye did not look like, anything had been planted. And our HOA president, she confirmed, like, I did not have any trees planted. Like, we would have had to pay for that, and they would have had to get an excavator and dug out some of the ground and put additional soil. Like, this is dry soil that is not loose. There's like rocky type material, like little crumbles of dry soil that are but at the top layer, the first inch or less. But this is soil that it sits directly underneath a huge pine tree, with huge pine cones that drop, and it is among river rock that's in that little area. And yeah, there's dried leaves that are there caught in between the little bramble that sits at the bottom of those trees. And so all of that would not be there. It would have looked a lot different. There wouldn't be pine needles stuck and intertwined in the bramble, if those were brand new trees.
Oh, that's an incredibly important observational piece, is that leaf litter from the pine is intermixed.
Yes.
Right. And embedded. I get it.
Yeah.
I worked as a landscaper. It takes a while for a tree to water in. You got to be on that shit all the time with water pretty much every day. Gradually giving it water in a circumference out from where you've planted it to promote the root to drive out into the new soil and establish. Right. So
yeah,
someone would have been tending to newly planted trees multiple times by everybody.
And wouldn't there be a stick where, they usually put small trees with a stick and they tie it so that it's stable, and, but there are four of these trees. Three of them are in a cluster. One of them is a little bit farther away, like 3 feet away. There's also another one, about 8 feet away. That's a baby one. That one is brand new and it's green still. And it's the same species. It's just still very short, like 2 or 3 feet.
But that's interesting too, because that suggests those trees have been there a while and they had a seedling.
Right. Along the root path or something.
Or just depending on what kind of tree they actually end up being. I mean, almost all trees drop some sort of seed, some fruit trees especially. So.
Right. And I'm doing the research on what kind of a tree it was, and I put into Gemini, like I put the picture into Gemini, and because I wanted help with identifying the species, and it gave me 3 options, but then I can continue to do the research to differentiate, and one of them was this. I would have to look up the exact species, but it said something about a cherry tree that has that does bear fruit, but I don't think it's like the cherries that we're thinking of, like the Rainier cherries. It doesn't look like that kind of a cherry tree. It looks like a different species of cherry tree, perhaps. But it was saying how it could be volunteer trees from the birds sitting in the pine tree. It could be from that, but that would still require the seeds to be dropped, and then for it to spring up and then grow. So we're just missing a whole chunk of time of when these trees started their growth. It's like we skipped forward into where they would have had to have been at least 3 years old, if not more, maybe 4, to reach this height based on the amount of growth. And it did say that those trees can have growth spurts each season. But again, that would require for us to have the trees already there in their process of growing to get to that high.
Okay. And I mean, all of that is highly rational discourse, which I admire, respect, and eagerly invite on this show at all times, right? You're doing such a good job of dialogue with me because you're going through the rational checklist that I would expect somebody to go through. And that is highly validating as I listen to you. It doesn't sound made up at all. It sounds like, okay, well, you're clearly perplexed, right? And
yeah.
And then, okay, but everything you just said gets erased by the woman who lives next door and never saw them every day for 10 years. And the homeowners association woman who, even what you're pointing out there, like say they were planted, homeowners association lady is going to get grief from the homeowner. Too much shade. I'm losing my morning light, blah, blah, blah. It's going to be a process. You're going to have to put that in front of the strata or whatever.
And that homeowner P is also on the board. So she would have known.
Oh, okay. Well, so there you go. So then there would have been no, like, I did this without telling you because we're having it sounded like they were friends, but they're on the board together. So it goes even deeper. That's really interesting. Okay. Let's Let's pause on all of that because we've covered like kind of 1, 2, 3. Let's get to the person who lived adjacent and looked out the window, including this guy from Canada.
Yes.
So tell me about that situation. How are they in position to these trees? Kind of break that down for me.
Okay. So the woman who we were already talking about, P, is directly next to it. And she has the end unit for her building. And then well, our building is offset backward. So it's farther away backward from the trees. But the couple who lives there, they have 2 small children who played outside every single day. And their parking was exactly right next to this area. Okay. So their kitchen window looked out onto this area, and they parked next to the big pine tree and next to these new trees. And they, even though they sold their home recently and they moved, literally, they're still our neighbors. They just moved like one little complex over. So we're all still really good friends, and they were invited back to our taco party. And so they were there. And the new homeowners, they have moved in, but they weren't there. So this is all pretty recent that all this change happened. But they literally just moved out weeks earlier. So it was actually really, that was added a layer for me because both of them are, they don't believe in anything woo-woo at all. Like for instance, the wife, she has hired me to do sound healing for, she works at a tech company. So I've gone into the tech company and done sound healing, and that's about as woo-woo as she'll get. She'll do yoga and she will partake in sound healing, but she really doesn't discuss the psychic stuff with me or any of the conspiracy theory stuff with me. It's fun to discuss it, but they are very much like non-believers in everything, in every phenomena that is not pragmatic. And especially her husband, who, he just is a person who I think would be a materialist if he had to define it, or at least lean more toward being a materialist if he had to define it. I don't know if he would necessarily call himself that, but he definitely has materialist like tendencies. And so I really like studying quantum physics and things like that. And so we'll talk about the science of it all and the philosophy of the science of it all. And we have interesting conversations, but it's very clear that both of them are solidly based in the 3D world, the 3D reality. And so for her, she was freaking out because I think this is like the first time she's ever experienced anything she really can't explain. And I didn't notice that they were second guessing themselves. They weren't second guessing themselves, even M, the husband. So I was like, this is interesting. Because normally if we're talking about a subject that cannot be proven, the default would just be not dismissive in a negative way or an egoic way at all, but just an agreement that, well, we can't prove that, so let's agree that that can't be, that's not provable. That's the type of approach he has taken in the past with me and talking about all these different subject matter things. So, yeah, she was really shocked. She was the first one to look back and see if there are different photos. She's like, I have so many photos of this because I take pictures of my kids all the time. She's like, my daughter was just playing in that area like last week and there were no trees there. But when she looked back at her photos, they were there. And I was like, that doesn't mean that I was like, according to the Mandela effect, it could be that if this is a glitch, then a lot of other glitch experiencers have reported that when they go back to look, it is as it is today and not as they remember it to be.
Or occasionally, in rare circumstances, residue is found where it is how it was remembered. which is kind of what you're outlining. So I need to get into this component of your storytelling now, since you've discussed pictures. It reminds me, you mentioned that you found photos where there are no trees and photos where there are trees. In the photos where there are trees, how far back approximately did that go?
10 months.
Okay, and what size are they in those photos?
They are shorter, but they're still like 8 feet tall, I would say.
Interesting.
Yeah. Because last year, everybody looked at their last year's taco party photos, and they were there, but they were shorter.
And then when you found photos where they are absent, how far back did those go?
About 15, I think it was either 15 or 17 months. So less than 2 years.
And in those photos, there's just no sign of the trees.
Nothing. No, there's nothing there. There's the bushes that are there. In fact, it's weird because in those photos, there's 3 bushes, and now there's only 1.
Oh, the plot thickens. I'm glad. I'm glad we're asking questions about photos. Let me just pause for a second and say this, Lana. You're one hell of a fantastic podcast guest.
Oh, thank you.
I can totally understand, as I spend an hour here with you and get to know you and listen to you, why you're very skilled and capable in the field you've now chosen, because you got a hell of a mind on you. Very, very crisp, clean, articulate thinker. And I can follow all of your thought processes, like right lockstep with you. So I'm really getting a great sense of like who you are, and it adds a tremendous amount of value to this storytelling. So
well, thank you.
Okay, in the Mandela effect, let's just talk about that for a second, because it's come up a number of times and it's worth further discussion here. Yeah, people go back and they're like, what the shit? These pictures are like wrong.
Yeah.
When you were looking back at the pictures, did you have that feeling when you saw them? Like, this is wrong?
Well, I didn't, only because, like I said, for me personally, my memory can be not great sometimes. So I will say, okay, I might be wrong. Like I will admit that, okay, my memory could be wrong. So I might be wrong. But that's where, when everyone else also said it, it blew me away, because I was like, okay, I'm not wrong. But but okay, in your specific question, looking back, I'm aware of the Mandela effect thing, where when you are in this reality and the trees are there, even though you believe they were not there, when you look back at the photos, oftentimes they are there. So I was aware of that. So to me, it's just cool. It was just cool. Like, wow, we're really experiencing a glitch, because it's not just me, it's everyone else.
There's so much. Okay, allow me, if it's okay with you at this juncture, to offer like a couple of correlated stories I've heard before that may add some insight. Would that be cool with you?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, one that stands out is I recently spoke to a woman, and her story goes like this. She works at this same office for 8 years, and every day she goes in the same front door, and there's a reception desk, and every day there's a garbage pail, at the front next to the reception desk. And every day it's circular. That's what she remembers. And one day she goes to work and she walks in and she's just like, wait, why is that square? And she's looking at this garbage bin, and she's like looking at it a long time. And the receptionist is like, are you okay? She's like, I'm sure this is a circular, and the receptionist is kind of like not really understanding what's going on, or not, feeling the same way about this garbage bin. So my guest quickly kind of goes back into her office and is a little confused, but later talks to a coworker who comes in like shortly thereafter, and she says, can you just come with me? And they go out, and she's like, isn't this usually a circular? And the woman that she works with is like, yes, it is circular. Why is this square? Did it change? It doesn't seem like a big deal, but it's kind of confusing enough to them and everyone around them that they're talking about it, right?
Yeah.
But then here's where the story progresses. So my guest goes back to work, and then later she goes out for lunch, and where she works, across the street from her, is a heritage home that has always been there, like from, the 1850s, 1870s kind of thing. It's like, it has like signage on it. It's kind of like a landmark almost, you know what I mean? And it's always there. And as she goes out for lunch and she opens the door, she just stops because the entire building is gone.
Oh.
No sign of this whatsoever.
I have the chills.
Yeah, see, me too. Another story that is not of my own, but kind of, I believe, because I've heard it elsewhere. Similar story, and this one is from Sasquatch Chronicles podcast. A guy is doing like a paranormal TV show, and he gets a request to go to this house to go talk to this woman for this paranormal TV show. So he goes with a camera crew and like a photographer and a production assistant. 4 people go to this house, and they go up the stairs and they go in the house and they meet with this woman, and the photographer on site takes a bunch of photos to get a reference point for the lighting because they're going to come back and do production later, and the production assistant takes a bunch of notes, and everyone is like in this house touching shit, doing shit. A bunch of freaky stuff happens in the house. They all leave, and they leave. And then a couple days later, the guy in question is like, I kind of have to go back to that house because of all that freaky shit. I need to know what the fuck that was. So he grabs his friend, who was the production assistant, and they get in the car and they go back to the house. And the one guy's driving, and he's like sort of parking. And as he's parking, he's parallel parking right in front of the house where it should be, basically. And he finishes parallel parking, and he turns and he looks at his friend in the passenger seat, and the friend in the passenger seat is like almost crying with his mouth open and staring out the window. And so he's looking at his friend's face, and then he looks past his friend out the window to see what he's looking at, and the house is gone.
No.
Yeah, totally gone. And they're sitting in the car idling, looking at this vacant lot, and this man comes over and taps on the door. He's like, tuck, 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 can I help you guys? He's like, kind of protecting the neighborhood, I guess. What the fuck are you guys doing here? And the guy rolls down the window and he's like, yeah, we're just here to go see this house. And the guy's like, what house? And he's trying to describe it. He's like, there was a heritage home here, like 3 stories, had a cupola, blah, blah, blah. And the guy who tapped on the window is like, oh, that house? That was torn down 4 years ago because the city thought it was haunted.
Oh! Wow.
Yep. And in that circumstance, there is photographs taken by the photographer that are of the house.
Oh, that's cool.
I know. So it would appear, at least for certain individuals, that rapidly changing or spontaneously appearing and disappearing objects can take the form as something as big as a home, or in your case, these trees and this like weird reconfiguration of bushes.
Yeah.
Now, short of like larger examples, and when I say larger, I just mean larger items like a home or a tree or something substantial that multiple people can agree. Oh, and by the way, just to finish my guest story, she then pulls her coworker out and says, where's that fucking house? And her coworker is equally aghast. Where is that house? However, they're the only 2 people in the office that seem to recall this or the garbage can being different.
Oh my God, chills again. That's so crazy, right?
Yes.
I mean, how do you explain that? And, I understand that people like to say, oh, they're just crazy. No, I don't accept that. I don't accept those labels. In order to be deemed crazy, you need to have, been evaluated by a licensed professional. You need to have real impact on your life that you cannot function. These seem like, normal functioning people that go to work every day that happen to have a different memory of their surroundings than everybody else. And there's just so much more to reality. When I started going down this rabbit hole, it was because of my health issues. And I got referred to a homeopathic practitioner without knowing what homeopathy was. And again, I I have been psychic my whole life, but the phenomenon really scared me, so I literally shut it off. I was like, "Nope, I'm not listening to my intuition," and I shut it off. But I ended up getting sick, and so I went to the homeopathy practitioner, and she's giving me all these homeopathic remedies, and I'm like, "Wait, I'm on medication. Is this going to interact?" And she's like, "No, there's no active ingredient in this. It's energy medicine." And I was like, "What?" So what do? I go home and I download on Audible the primer for homeopathy school that a student studying to become a homeopathy practitioner would read as their intro in their first, semester. And at the end of that book, not only was I so much more enlightened about how Western medicine works and how the drug company trials work, and it also talked about quantum physics at the end. And this one quote that I went on to research really stood out. And that is that scientists can only explain 6% of the world that we know with science. And that stat, the fact that there's 94% of the universe that we do not understand, that we can't even identify, it leaves so much room for possibilities that we haven't yet learned. And it was from there that I started threading together, you know, more studying. Because even though I shut off my intuition, my first spiritual book that I ever read, I was 19 years old. That was, a long time ago. I kept reading. I kept wanting to understand. I kept wanting to learn. But getting to a place where I really wanted to learn the science. Well, now we're starting to see that science and this quote unquote woo woo stuff is starting to connect. I mean, the Nobel Prize was won by scientists who proved quantum teleportation and entanglement about 4 years ago. That explains a lot. And with CERN, all these advanced scientific things that are happening in the world, I think that there's so much that we do not know that it is reckless, and it's just reckless to discount people's mental insanity for glitches like this. Because if we don't know 94%, or we can't prove 94% of physics, then there is so much room for things that are just beyond our understanding as humanity at this point in time, right? So, when you look at those two people who, in their world, this heritage home used to be there. I mean, think about how altering that is for the rest of their life. you know and you do question, oh my god, am I going crazy? But when you have somebody else that is experiencing the same thing, that becomes less of a likelihood, right? I mean, unless there's shared hallucinations, which those happen too. But that's back to my story when I was thinking, what? Wait a minute, there's no trees there. The fact that everyone else, if we're hallucinating, we're having a shared hallucination. What are the odds of that? It's like, there are certain things that are just inexplicable that happen. In the ancient times, they would call it miracle, right? Even now, today, you could call it a miracle. But, I don't know. There's just so much that can be looked at when we have situations like this. Human perception is faulty. Human memory is faulty a lot of time. So there's got to be room to evaluate. Is it my memory? Is it my perception that's faulty, right? But when you have a shared experience, I think it helps me at least know that it's not just me, and there might be something here.
Yeah, the shared encounters and experiences, and those that have a physical object or a physical component to them, are the ones which push you over the threshold of reasonable doubt.
Right.
And they are therefore acts of gifts in a way. Whether intentional or glitch-based is truly up for debate, and I would not venture that I could assign a value to any particular glitch like the trees. But I've heard enough stories where people are having objects spontaneously materialize. Like a good example would be like this woman, Harper, who was having a bunch of trouble in her house. one thing led to another. She sort of figured out this might be fairies. Then she kind of figured out what she might be able to do about it. And then she left an offering. And then the next day, she was walking up the stairs to go back inside her house, and a shiny penny from 2007 materialized out of thin air and dropped into the front of her sandals. And then the next day, she was on a walk with her dog, and another 2007 shiny penny materialized and dropped into the toe of her sandals on the grass. And then on a third day, she was walking her dog, and she saw this little sparkle, but it was kind of like a matte sparkle, not shiny. And she looked down, and there was a 2007 penny sitting at the toe of her closed-toed shoes.
No way.
And then after that, the next morning, she woke up and found a brown shoebox, and inside of it was a handcrafted pair of Adidas that perfectly fit her and were brand new.
Whoa. That's crazy.
No receipt, no Amazon, nothing like that.
Wow.
And so when you think about, like, can a penny spontaneously materialize, and can a fairy do that? In Harper's case, that seems pretty point A to point B to point C, right?
Yeah.
Now your brownstone community is lacking a initial, lead up that sounds like fairy activity, and then therefore the trees can't be directly correlated to fairies. However, the mechanism that the Fae are using to pull off something like the spontaneous materialization of a penny has been cataloged by me, at least anyway, in this show process. I mean, dozens, if not hundreds of times. If you talk about some people having 10, 20, 30 things happen to them. I mean, I could go on and on and on. A woman lost her wedding ring. She couldn't find it for 3.5 years. A long sequence of events unfolded to the point where she filmed a gnome in her backyard. And then in her mind, she said, could I have my wedding ring back? And she opened the door, and there was the wedding ring on the center floorboard of her deck. So, can things be taken? Can things be returned? And the mechanism appears to those experiencing it to be akin to what you're describing, which is just total spontaneous materialization.
Yeah.
And that includes objects that were once there and then came back, objects that were never there and spontaneously materialized. Coins, shockingly, is a very common theme. Another woman came home to find her kitchen cleaned, and in the center was a bright, shiny penny from India at the center of her countertop, almost like a token to let you know, hey, we were here. Here's a little calling card or something, And so when I listen to this story about trees, and I contemplate the implications of that on what you might reverse engineer as to what is the nature of reality, it actually seems remarkably consistent with the phenomenon I've been investigating. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The mechanism, of course, is perhaps incredibly different here. And it may be that the underlying hypothesis, which I am relying on, is that reality as a lived experience is an illusory event.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
This is not to say that it is not real. It's the reality of it contains the aspect of it that it is illusory. It's still very real, but it is actually a much more modulated. Let me just articulate that more correctly. This is a hard thing to say because it's a hard thought.
Yeah.
I think that reality is, in fact, a real experience, but that the underlying mechanism of that experience is one that can be modulated to alter not just the presence of objects in the lived experience, but much, much more. This would allow for, a lot of the phenomenon that you're talking about with quantum theory and even quantum biology, emerging, is starting to point to potential mechanisms for these hypotheses that I'm associating with fairies being more scientifically understood. And for that reason, I think CERN, either intentionally or unintentionally, may be tickling the strings of that underlying mechanism.
Yes. And I think quantum computing is another area that might be tickling the edge of the boundary of our known reality as well.
I agree with that wholeheartedly. And I kind of think that to what extent a fairy is a type of non-human intelligence, which is comprised entirely of a energetic frequency, free from the constraints of physical body, as a contrast to us. The soul of us is not that different than the soul of a fairy. We just have our soul kind of stuck in our body so far as we know, or our lived experience is telling us, and they don't have that constraint. But to kind of this so quickly can become word salad, but I think we're keeping a pretty even keel here, but let's keep going. I've talked to a number of guests who themselves have modulated reality, often unintentionally. Like one guest, Ruby, was bathing her two twin daughters, and she had previously had a shower and left like a very sharp antique hairpin in the shampoo holder, and noticed, oh my God, this is above my children, Mm-hmm. And so she grabbed it, and she was terrified that it might have fallen while she was bathing them and really hurt them. And she went to hand it to her husband, and as she opened her hand to hand it to him, it was gone.
Oh.
Wow. In her fear about it, she had dematerialized it.
Wow.
And he saw that happen. And so, I think that people possess, whether they know it or not, I just think just about every person does possess the ability to interact with reality, because that's just a component part of being alive. That's that lived experience reference point that I'm talking to. And I think furthermore, if we can do it on an individual level, it stands to reason that Fae, who are a much more kind of powerful entity type than us on some levels, could do it too. And that a scientific approach, like at a quantum, level like CERN is doing, where they're colliding particles, could also unlock the same phenomenon. But all of it points to one truth, which is that reality is not so fixed.
Mm-hmm. And we know that. We know that through quantum physics, because we know that we're not even solid. We just perceive that we are through our human perspective and our senses. But if you go small enough and you look in the microscope at a high enough power, you'll see that there's space in between all of our molecules. And it doesn't seem that way to any average person, but there's space in between. And so we are not solid. Nothing's actually solid. And, the way that I've learned, and I won't go too far into this because I can probably talk for 5 hours on this, but I channel. I am a channeler, and my guides spend a lot of time with me teaching me about reality and the universe. And one very simple analogy that I think I've heard other people use as well is like the radio station, where all of the radio stations are being played simultaneously, but your perspective is the dial. And when you turn the dial to one radio station, it's a frequency band. And that frequency band is, 94.5 or whatever you want to call it, right? And when you're dialed into that frequency band, you're experiencing the broadcast at that frequency. And this is what you can do in meditation, and what I do with my clients when they're under hypnosis, you can turn the dial to a different frequency band where you're tuned in now to a different frequency, where there's different information and different experience available to you. And that is kind of how I imagine what we're doing with breaking through in these amazing scientific advancements that are happening right now with quantum computing and with physics. We are turning the dial. And if you are familiar with the string theory or the multiverse theory, there's an infinite amount of different frequency bands that we can visit. Many people hypothesize that when you pass away, your soul, or your what's the right word? Your being passes through into a different frequency level. That's just right across a veil that we can't access without, instrumentation of some sort, or without practice, because I believe everyone can shift their perspective from their ego to their higher self through meditation and through learning how to do it. And I think everybody has psychic ability. You just have to learn how to do it. It's a practice. And it's a matter of turning the dial to a different frequency band. One thing that my guides have told me is that humans make the mistake of believing that our human perspective is the ultimate perspective that is experienced, but we are multidimensional and we have different layers of experience. It's just that we're dialed into the human one right now. Through meditation, you can get to a different layer of your own soul's experience in the multidimensional layer. And so that's kind of what, if you go under hypnosis or if you meditate, what you're doing, you're changing your brain frequencies. And because you're doing that, the antenna shift and you can pick up and perceive different elements of reality that aren't available with our natural senses as a human body.
You know what I like about you, Lana? I can hear the tech professional meets the inductee into, occult knowledge. And you're so much like me, because at some point it's like chugga 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 chugga. You can hear the train coming. Here comes the new age stuff. All of a sudden it's like boom, what I think matters. What thoughts and feelings I hold inside myself impact the actual fucking world and universe potentially.
Yes.
All of these quote unquote parasympathetic illnesses that I'm constantly experiencing are my ability to perceive all this wrong around me, not something that is like medically wrong. Like there's so many things that I have crested that really sound like we've been on a pretty similar journey. And I recognize a fella intellectual and deep thinker in you. So, I really am getting a lot out of just listening to you. Sound so competent, sound so thoughtful, and still have that perplexity about the event around these trees. And it's really actually super valuable to talk to you, because you're self-discounting that, because you've come from that tech and analytical space, and you're also really informed on potential like reasons for it, and you're drawing like a really well balanced analysis. I think it adds just so much validity that this actually happened. I just don't think this is a group mind fart and the MOA lady forgot that she paid to have trees planted and you all just kind of slipped up. A lot of people have said that when they fired up CERN, shit got bad, And the idea of symbolism, if there is any, in the idea that potentially CERN shut down and these trees appeared, is that more vegetation would appear to be a positive thing. So maybe that is a sign that we're back into reality with a little bit more hope in it, hopefully.
Yeah, wouldn't that be great to have more life, more trees, cleaner air, right? I mean, that is definitely a positive, and more beauty, because plants are beautiful beings.
Here's something I want to say. It's come up, and I'm always reluctant to like do or say shit like this, because as I pointed out earlier, the show is really about you. But this is coming up. Like, I just can't stop thinking about this as we're talking. Trees spontaneously appearing seems like very impossible. For some reason, a ring showing up seems like, I don't know, maybe something had it and gave it back. But a tree just kind of being there that shouldn't be there kind of pushes a threshold a little bit further into a very deeply held kind of belief that I'm starting to hover around, that I'll feel, I think, comfortable sharing with you, and I guess by association sharing with the audience. Now, here's something you don't know about me. Before I got into all this, I had a pretty long environmental activism background. And I had this event that I think, looking back on it now, was kind of part of my journey towards seeing that fairy. What was going on is that I was doing a protest against whale watching of orca whales in the British Columbia coast. And how I was doing that protest is I was aboard this 75-foot boat that I bought and painted to look like orcas, and I was out there on the water directly confronting these tour operators that were harassing these endangered animals. That's the backdrop for what I'm about to explain and tell you. Now, I really painted this boat up. It took several months. It was beautiful, like a real work of art. Anybody who saw that boat immediately wanted to come over and talk to me about what was going on, which was the point. And the day that I finished the painting, I backed it out and out of the marina in this place called Saanich Inlet. And that's kind of I'll just pause there because I want to just give a little bit more back context for the point I'm about to try to make. Now, even before that, I had like a long background of protesting old growth logging. And I spent a lot of time back in these ancient ecosystems that look like, Avatar or Narnia, like really 1,000, 1,200-year-old trees, just astonishing stuff, like California redwoods, for some context for you. And when I was back in those spaces, you would get you'd walk up the road to where the cutting had stopped, and now you were getting past the threshold into the ancient forest. And within 5 seconds of stepping into that threshold, it was like there was a different existence there. And you could walk back out and you'd be like, oh, it's missing. And then you go back in and you could feel it. Even as I describe it, I'm getting tingles all over my body, in fact. And I always felt like magic, but I couldn't articulate that. Now, going back to this thing with the whales. So here I am, I'm doing this big campaign, and I'm launching the campaign effectively by launching the boat. And it's just me and my best friend Blake in the boat, and we back it off, and as we're backing it off, we kind of start to straighten the boat and go forward, and I hear this big clunk, and shit, what did I fucking hit? So I have him take the wheel, and I run out to the edge of the boat, and I look down over the edge. And as I look over, I again see, when I say again, I saw what had caused the initial sound, because it happened again, which is a giant king salmon jumped out of the water and hit the side of the boat. And then right behind it, this 6-foot dorsal fin, and this orca was right there.
Oh my goodness.
And followed behind it was the family pod. And Blake and I were screaming like schoolgirls, holy shit, they're here. It would appear to everyone rationally involved in that moment, including what unfolded next, that they were not there, and then all of a sudden they were there. Including this king salmon. And for some, not that I'm a marine biologist or anything, but Saanich Inlet, where this was happening, is known as the salmon are dead in there. There are no salmon.
Oh.
And for this reason, the orca are not known to come into this body of water, because it goes very deep into an inland inlet. It's totally surrounded by houses on all sides, and it's just kind of overfished and overused, and it's not a place that orcas or salmon are found anymore. And so for there to be both a giant king salmon and then a second one, and for it to hit my boat, and the symbolism of me trying to do a campaign to protect orcas, in effect, to then have because the critical issue is that the orca salmon supply is decimated, and so they're starving to death. And then in addition, they're being harassed by these tour operators who are trying to get a dying look at them, in effect. But for both of those real live animals to spontaneously appear where they should not be, left me with this feeling that I've been, this is this big thing I'm leading up to that I'm trying to tell you that I want to say. And what your trees are bringing up for me, I guess, is that I think if we all got together, humans, and really gave our love back to the planet, we wouldn't have to wait 150 years for everything to heal. I honestly think it would spontaneously and exponentially heal in a way that doesn't seem plausible to our current understanding, complete with the spontaneous materialization of many more fauna and flora.
I would totally agree with that hypothesis. And simply because when we bring the love vibration into our beings with awareness, we shift our reality. All of our reality will shift around us if we carry a vibration of love within us. And if we, hopefully one day, if we're able to achieve that as a humanity, everything will shift, because the things that live in negative or low vibrations won't even exist anymore, because our reality will be shifted into a higher level of vibration. And so the things that are harmful will naturally fall away. They can't even exist in a higher vibrational field.
Yeah, and I I love that you're like there with me. That means a lot to me. I'm like a little bit shaky. I don't know. I have a hard time giving that kind of shit voice sometimes. Like, I actually think if we just all thought about it, we could fix the world. Sounds about as weak and hopeful as, what I'm trying to say is like, when I was doing like that activism, I was trying to like have some power on some level over something, I
Right.
really wanted to do what I was trying to do a lot. I think it's obvious, I put my fucking time and money and effort where my mouth
Yeah.
was,
The big effort.
and lots of ridicule and all sorts of fucking risks associated with it. But
Yeah.
all the same, I couldn't help myself. And the result, with the orcas and then subsequently seeing that ferry, and then ultimately where I find myself having this conversation with you here today, are deeply connected in a narrative in my mind about where I'm at and how it's all happened, And one of the examples I'm trying to leave for the audience to pick up on in the show is like, look, what this is all about is us and our intention to each other in this world.
Yes. Absolutely. That is the ultimate what it's all about, honestly, because, well, I'll give a little tiny example from actually the last channeling session that I did. And they were explaining to me how um, Source projects things into reality. I'm not going to go into all of that, but what I will say is that the concept, the premise is that we're all from the same source, and that we, like prisms, differentiate into different beings, different points of light, and that those points of light have intelligence and have consciousness, and that consciousness is primary. And this is where the holographic reality theory comes into play, where you were talking about earlier, where things are a projection, right? And what they wanted to convey is that, okay, if you imagine the sphere, have you ever seen a photo or been to Las Vegas of the sphere in Las Vegas?
I've been there.
Okay. And so you know that the entire thing is an LED screen, right? The entire ball, it's a sphere, and the whole thing lights up, and you can put whatever pictures and whatever images that you want on the outside of it. And it's lit, it's light. And so they were using this imagery for me to explain how, imagine that the source of unity consciousness is in the center of the sphere and is projecting out 360 degrees. And the screen on the outside of the sphere is what we would experience in humanity. The concept that the source light is all light, then gets shaded or altered in some way through consciousness, and then the end result is a projection, right? And so I am a projection of source, but there's a screen on me, there's a filter on me that makes me have brown hair and blue eyes and tan skin and whatever it might be. And your projection is configured in a different way as me, but we're all coming from the same source. But the thing is that we think, oh, well, our light stops with me. No, our light shines through us and it impacts other people. My light is impacting you right now, as in our conversation, and your light is impacting me. This conversation, our light will be shining out toward others, impacting their life. And so not only are we singular in our consciousness, but we're also interconnected. And we can't discount that, right? We can't discount our interconnectedness. But within that light, we have to remember that we're all from the same source. And so your thoughts and your actions actually impact others, even though you might not think they do. And so when we think about the impact that we are leaving on the world, we can control some aspects of our consciousness. We can control our thinking. We can control how we treat others, how we treat ourselves. But when we focus on enlightening, on taking our soul and being the best possible person that we can, or maybe not, maybe we don't care about that, and we just want to get money, and we want to screw other people over and it doesn't matter about other people. Guess what? Your light is affecting other people. We are interconnected. And so eventually, the concept and the thought is hopefully people will begin to see that and recognize that our light shines outward and it impacts other people and it impacts the earth. It impacts the cosmos even because we are infinite beings. At least that's my belief. And so fixing our intentions, our words matter, our thoughts matter. Everything that we engage in actually matters not only to ourselves, but to other people. And that is why when you think about different bands of frequency being certain realities, if you're living in negativity, if you're living in self-hatred, if you're living in hatred of others, or even in a place where you don't honor yourself, you're living in a frequency that holds those types of activities, that holds crime, it holds, that frequency band holds those actions. As you become more enlightened, as you become more loving, as your heart expands, as you recognize the interconnectedness, our frequency shifts and we're able to experience more than what we could have imagined. We are able to experience shifts in reality that we can't explain, and we leave behind some of the other more negative or darker aspects of life as we ourselves shift, but then we're also impacting the collective. So it's my hope that we eventually, as a humanity, can understand our connectivity and interconnectedness so that we can shift into a better version of reality.
Let me tell you, Lana, I'm happy to inform you that this successfully concludes our interview for your position as CEO of Fascinating Fae Enterprises. I'll be looking forward to forwarding you your compensation package and offer formally at your email provided. Yeah, this long headhunting journey to find my new CEO is drawing to a conclusion here. What a treat. Jokes aside, I mean, you're wonderfully articulate.
Thank you.
I especially like the portion about how you're affecting me, I'm affecting you, and subsequently this conversation will go on to affect others. That is a true desire of mine for this show's outcome. And I know for sure a lot of people listening get the Fascinating Fae effect out of it. This episode is chock full of it, and that's thanks to you. You've done a fantastic job of just everything here tonight. I want to thank you again.
Well, thank you for giving me the opportunity to come on your podcast. I had a great time.
I'll tell you what, we've covered a great amount of, ground. That's a tree joke, I think, somewhere in there. And now we're going to leave it here. But what I usually do around this juncture in the show is I just kind of signal that I like to keep my episodes around 2 hours. And I can see that this is around the appropriate time to kind of start wind down mode, if that's cool with you.
Absolutely.
Well, at the top of the conversation, you said something truly captivating, which is that you live in the world of fairies. And I also believe that you mentioned Doris Cannon. Is that correct?
Dolores Cannon. Yeah.
I've heard that name a number of times. I realize I said it incorrectly there, but I have heard that name a number of times. And can you just reference once again the specific works of Dolores Cannon that got you interested?
Yeah, so all of her books, but specifically the Convoluted Universe series. I think there's 5 books. And just quickly, Dolores Cannon was a hypnotist back in the 60s and early 70s who was from the Bible Belt, didn't believe in reincarnation or anything like that. Her husband was a military person, and her and her husband did hypnosis, like quit smoking, lose weight type of thing. And all of a sudden, her clients started spontaneously having past life recall. Now, Dolores Cannon didn't purport to be psychic. She didn't even have any experience with the occult or anything like that, but she regarded herself as a reporter. And so she began taking copious notes on her subjects when they would do past life recall. And her being her skeptical, inquisitive reporter self, she started to do research on the things that her clients were recalling from their past lives. And she is a master question asker. So open-ended questions. She'll follow the thread. A great reporter, investigator. So when she had her clients under hypnosis, she really spent time investigating, and she began validating these stories that people were saying. And at that time, consciousness among humanity was not, I would say before 2012, that's when things really kind of shifted in human consciousness. But prior to that, her clients wouldn't remember anything when they came out of hypnosis. And so what happened to really convince her was she would have a client that would start talking about a subject matter. And then 3 clients later, someone completely unrelated would come in and continue the story that was left off 3 clients ago. And this blew her mind. Not only that, she was able to verify factually a lot of the things that people were talking about. And she started compiling all of these stories together and all these themes together. And that's how she wrote all of her books. The Convoluted Universe series is amazing. If you have not read that, I highly recommend it. If you're interested in these types of subjects, she does cover fairy in the Fae. And yeah, so reading those books, it shifted my thinking. So like I said before, I was very closed-minded. I wanted proof. And after reading so many other authors and such in this subject matter area, when I finally got to the Convoluted Universe series, I shifted how I evaluated things. And I started, instead of like wondering, is this true or not? I started asking, what if this were true? What if this were true? How would that change my perception of reality? How would that alter what I think is solid and true and unchangeable if this were true? And that's when validations for me started coming through. And I started getting all these coincidences of, validating my thoughts around what if this were true. And even to this day, if I come across a subject matter that I'm initially skeptical about or very skeptical about, one of those for me in particular was inner earth, this inner earth theory and the inner earth people. I'm still very skeptical. I was like, you know what? I don't know if I believe in that. I need more information. Well, guess what? My next client, in her hypnosis, she brought through an inner earth past life. And she was describing some of the things that I had encountered. So I get these validations, and that's why for me, when I opened my mind and I started asking, what if this were true? It really changed the things in my world, because I started getting, I can't call it proof, but coincidences that were just so uncanny that it made me really question, like, wow, okay, here's even more, the door is even more open now for this to be a possibility. And I just live in that world where, I am skeptical naturally, but in the end, I do keep myself open because I have experienced things that I cannot explain so many times. And this tree incident is one of them. But this one was great because it wasn't only me experiencing it, it was everybody.
Truly, I'll make the same joke again. If and when metaphysical enterprises become the big business that they're supposed to be, you're in line to be a CEO. I can tell you've sat in rooms with CEOs delivering like team leadership, because you sound very, very much like somebody that I would follow, just with your really balanced and passionate perspective. And you mentioned a second ago that Dolores Cannon talks about fae and fairies. And thank you for, delving into that a little bit more. I wanted to leave a thread there for some of the audience that might be interested to follow. Let me ask you my favorite going away question. I ask this to everybody. There's definitely no right or wrong answer. It's just about your perspectives and feelings in one place. Here's my question. Lana, what do you think fairies are?
I think they're intelligent life forms that exist in a slightly phased out reality from the world that we live in. And I think that they're probably part of the the earth spirits or elemental type spirits. I know that they, through some of my clients that have experienced lives as fairies, they are very much in tune with the nature elements and are protectors of nature as well. So yeah, I think that they're intelligent life forms that just are phased out of our reality a bit. And that we know some about them, but we don't know all.
That's all accurate, and I like that answer a lot. What was I going to say there? My thought escaped me because I find myself just listening to you so intently. What I'll do here is this, if it's okay with you, Lana. I have the same format for finishing off the show every episode as well. I give my guests the last word, but before I get there, I'm just going to do 1 minute of podcaster housekeeping, and then I'll bring you back for your last word. Is that cool with you?
Yep. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, awesome. Oh, I remember what I was going to say. I'll say it now. So just to establish our baseline for this conversation, in recap, some Coles notes. Animals can spontaneously appear. Houses can spontaneously appear. Trees can spontaneously appear. There is no upper limit to the ability, I think, for us as a collective to modulate this reality. And I kind of believe that Lana and I are in agreement on that, which is a huge win for everybody listening. So, Lana, that was the thing I was going to say. I don't know if that added any value or not, but it's what came to mind. And now on to my housekeeping. So for everybody listening, you've been listening tonight to Fascinating Fae, and I'm your host, Jim. If you'd like to come on the show, you can shoot me an email at encounters@fascinatingfae.com. And if you're more comfortable, you can send me a DM on any social media, where you can also find the show by looking for Fascinating Fae. Now, with all of that said and done, I'll say this. Lana, on behalf of all of our human and non-human listeners that are tuning into Fascinating Fae tonight, a super big thanks to you coming all the way from California to be on the show. I've had a great time, and I sincerely appreciate everything you've offered tonight.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me. I've had a great time, and it's always nice to interact with like-minded people and not have to worry about sounding insane to other people who maybe haven't asked, what if that were true?
It's truly a relief on some level. And with all that acknowledgement and momentum behind us, here's a chance for your last words, please.
Yeah, no, this has been great. And I really appreciate that you gave me a new perspective to think of as a cause for what happened in our community with the trees, that fairies might be involved. I never even thought about that connection. And so it's been a great thing for me to ponder. And I hope that for all your listeners, this was a really interesting podcast to listen to. And I just thank you so much for the opportunity to come share my story. If you are in the Bay Area in California and you'd like to get a past life regression, I am open for business, and I'll give my contact information. I also do psychic readings, so I will give my contact information if you are interested.
Raise the mast and sail away into the open grey. Well, I must go. I follow my compass in any which way, night and day, wherever the wind blows. So with or without you, I know what I have to do. I follow the golden path from the sunrise, the warm glow from a campfire, a cool drink from a mountain stream. And this is what makes me wise. So find a proper walking stick, for the journey is long and the trail is overgrown. To the still waters of an alpine lake, to the call of a mountain lion, well, I will roam. with or without you, I know what I have to do. I follow the golden path from the sunrise, the warm glow from a campfire, a cool drink from a mountain stream. This is what makes me wise. In the dawn before the salmon spawn, I drop my fishing line into the sea. Through rainy dusks and foggy dawns, I know I'll continue on, 'cause this is me. So with or without you, well, I know what I have to do. I follow the golden path from the sunrise, the warm glow from a campfire, a cool drink from a mountain stream. This is what makes me wise. So with or without you, well, I know what I have to do. I follow the golden path from the sunrise, the warm glow from a campfire, a cool drink from a mountain stream. This is what makes me wise.
Several years later, getting a job at the building next door, and it was just like, yeah, now I work next to that house that I had been through. So anyways, none of that would be relevant except for the fact that I showed up to work one day and I had this moment where I was looking at the garbage can in the main area of my work, and I just was looking at the garbage can and was like, I feel like I remember that garbage can being round, but it's square today. Like, it looks weird. And so I ended up asking somebody that I worked with, like, are the garbage cans in the main room, are they square or are they round? And they affirmed that they thought they were round too, but now they were square. And so we were standing there looking at it and both just like, huh, that's weird. I remember them being this other shape. So I go and I sit down at my desk and I look out the window, and the house that to me looked like it had a face that I had toured before wasn't there anymore. It was entirely different. It was like a 2-story duplex thing that was entirely a different building. And there was no construction that had gone on to make it look like that. It was just, boom, a totally different building right next door.
So strange.
Yeah, that's probably the most standout-ish moment because I had the 2 things happen that day, the trash can thing and then the building thing. And it was all on the same day. Same day. Same day. Same day. Same day.
From a place far, far away, I call you. Listen now, open your ears to me. There are things that you never see, things you thought could never be, thoughts you can't conceive or believe. The world is bleeding, well, diseases are feeding through infected breeding all season. Now stabilize your breathing and find me a reason. Tell me why all these people have to die. And take the earth, place her in your palm, give her a rebirth, diffuse all the bombs, and cradle her like she's your own. We can reach global harmony. It starts right here with you and me. But if not now, then when? And as a fly lands upon the face of a little boy crying on a dusty doorstep in Kenya, we know that there still is work to do. And when across the seas there are casualties to various nationalities, the time is now when it's up to me and you. And when the radio blares of daily despairs, of people walking up heaven's stairs, there's work to do, I'm gonna call on you. And in the middle of the night when the sirens scream and they wake me up and they wreck my dream, this is nothing new. We've got a job to do. We take the earth and place her in your palm. Give her a rebirth, diffuse all the bombs, and cradle her like she's your own. We can reach global harmony. It starts right here with you and me. But if not now, then when? But if not now, then when? But if not now,